Mini episode 1803 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.com.
The FDH Lounge. You'll want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to FDH Lounge mini episode 1803. This is FDH Managing Partner Rick Morris coming at you today with one of our favorite FDH Lounge dignitaries. He is a great sports writer for OurSports Central, Fran Stuchbury, and we have him on the show generally to talk football and almost always within that to talk college football. So as you might have guessed, we have him here today to talk about the 2024-2025 College Football National Championship. It will be taking place in Atlanta next Monday, January the 20th, a combination of Inauguration Day, MLK Day, and National Championship Day. Quite a brew there for the first time ever with all of those three, and many years, I'm sure, before that happens again, because it would take Inauguration Day being on a Monday for that to all line up again. But Ohio State and Notre Dame, and this is something that within my family is proving a bit divisive, as of course I've mentioned a number of times on the show. My dad, an Ohio State alum, my brother, a Notre Dame alum, and he happens to live in the Atlanta area. So shout out to my brother. He's got some friends that are coming into town also. They all got tickets for the game. And as I was saying to Fran off air, my brother is a guy where, again, he could go and spend a pretty penny on stuff, but to his credit, he is a frugal person, notwithstanding, what he's able to do. So I know he must have gotten a deal somewhere. I can't imagine how he could have under the circumstances, but my brother is not a guy that spends crazy stupid on these things here. My nephew Fletcher is actually volunteering at the Fan Fest that they have at the Georgia World Congress Center. So I have a lot of family interest in this game, more so than there are for most sporting events out there. And to get a little bit of expert analysis, that's what we got Fran here for. So let me reach out and make the hot tag here to my man, Fran Stuchbury from OurSports Central. Fran, pleasure to have you on today, my friend.
Thanks to be on, Rick. I'm excited to talk to you about college football.
It's always great to have you on, my friend. And this is a championship game like none other because of everything that led up to it here. The culmination of the first 12-team playoff, the number 7 and number 8 seeds, remarkably, in this playoff, the way that it shook out here. And there was a little bit of a thought that, again, it might not necessarily always be an advantage for the top 4 seeds. We're going to look back, once the championship game is done, you and I will do a separate segment looking back at the whole thing here and the whole bowl season. But in terms of each team and their road to the championship game, Notre Dame just kept that hot streak going that they had the better part of the year after getting embarrassed by Northern Illinois early on. They just kept going and going and going. For Ohio State, the exact opposite story. Choking against Michigan. A heartbreaking 4th loss in a row to that team up north. Ryan Day was looking cooked. But again, this is the thing. I've said this all along about Ohio State. You see it going back to, this is a little bit similar to the 2022 national semifinals against Georgia. He went out against Georgia with nothing to lose after that second Michigan loss, and they hung with them and almost won that game. That's how they came out against Tennessee, and they have followed suit ever since. Tennessee, Oregon, and now subsequently Texas falling in their path. So 2 different paths for both of the Titans that we have in this game, Fran.
Yeah, 2 different paths, and if it was for the 12-team playoff, Rick, neither of those teams would be in the championship right now.
That is true. And my friend, FDH Lounge original dignitary Chris Galloway, he and I were kind of debating by text this week because, again, I'm a stickler for the 4-team playoff, the +1. I wanted that to be the case long before they went to it. I refuse to surrender on my point of view at this point in time. I do admit that I have enjoyed a lot of what has come this season, a lot of the things that have come with the expanded playoff. I do have to admit that. But this is one of these things where, again, it can be said the system saved Ryan Day. I mean, we can look back at with the past seasons here and say, might such and such coach still have a job if he'd gotten another chance after having a big choke? So it's one of these things where, as easily as you could say, the system is revealing the greatness of Ohio State, arguably the most talented team in the country, the $20 million in NIL. You could say that the system is revealing that, but you could also just as easily say that they're a product of a very random system here, because last year this didn't exist. Ryan Day would have been out on his ass with another choke in a New Year's Six bowl game. Instead, they have a very good chance to win the national championship, and he's the big hero because of something completely outside the control of the Ohio State team. What year this was in terms of what system?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, especially like with Notre Dame when they lost North Illinois. After that, they turned around and they won every game, and they played with a lot of heart and soul. I mean, I can see where if you don't like Ohio State, you're kind of rallying around Notre Dame. I think. What do you think, Rick? Do you think mostly the college football fans, most of them in general, for Notre Dame, or there's still some Ohio State fans all over the country?
Well, Ohio State, again, they've got the largest alumni base anywhere, and what's funny is before the season, I actually picked them to be in the Cotton Bowl against Texas, and I picked them to lose to Texas because I thought de facto home game for Texas. One of the things I didn't realize is the Metroplex is one of the largest areas in the country for OSU alums. So there were a whole bunch of them right there in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I don't know how much that sort of countervailed against Texas's de facto home field advantage. But this is a thing where I think what you're talking about, and there has been some stories about this recently, it's a very interesting angle that you mentioned, Fran, because, again, Brian Kelly, not a likable guy. Can we just be honest? I mean, in terms of his public persona anyways, I don't want to necessarily make a public, personal attack, although, again, he's still, I go back to the student that perished when that tower blew over in the wind, and I still think that not enough of that stuck to Brian Kelly. And that he came out of that better than he deserved to be. So I'm not really a big Brian Kelly guy personally, although I respect that he is an excellent coach. I don't know that he's a top-tier coach in the country, but I think he is easily at least a second-tier coach. And Marcus Freeman, I mean, look, he's a young guy. He's energetic. He often appears to be in good spirits. I mean, he's made them more likable. He's made that brand a heck of a lot more likable. Meanwhile, with Ryan Day, the one thing that I think you can't say is that he's necessarily made the Ohio State brand more likable. Maybe people thought that initially after Urban Meyer left because, again, not a warm and cuddly guy to anybody outside the Buckeye fan base, but Ryan Kelly, the way that he's reacted to adversity prior to all of this has really not been great. All you got to do is go back to the Notre Dame game. I was at the last two Ohio State Notre Dame games, the one at Notre Dame and the previous one in Columbus in the 22 and 23 season. I was actually at the game in 95 too, which is the first time that they played in 60 years. But that second game where Ryan Day comes out spouting afterwards, I like to know where Lou Holtz is right now. I will admit that although that made him look very, very unlikable and justifiably so, if they win the championship, he's got to say that again. I need to hear him say that again if they win the championship. It would actually be funny to me this time.
Yeah, it definitely would be, but honestly, Rick, there's a lot more pressure on Ohio State to win this game than for Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman, he's a guy that, come on, the Bears would love him to jump ship and go there, but Marcus Freeman just got an extension a few weeks ago. He's happy in Notre Dame. And the thing is, Notre Dame, they're getting $20 million for the championship. And since they're not in a conference break, they get to keep all the money.
They do. You pointed that out to me. That's a very good point. And again, he has done a tremendous job in terms of, again, they've always, the Notre Dame people will always tell you the handicap in terms of their recruiting is their admission standards. And so they're never going to come into a game like this on an even footing with one of the mega powers of college football, who Ohio State definitely is. But they have shown some real resilience on the offensive line here. They keep having bodies drop along the way. They keep plugging guys in here. Jeremiah Love supposedly is in better shape than he has been previously. A little bit of the way off here, but 10 days or so between the games, that will definitely help. They're going to be leaning on him a lot. It's up to Riley Leonard to make sure that Ohio State isn't able to go 8 in the box that much. And again, Ohio State with the front that they have, they're hard enough to run on, even if they play you straight up. But Riley Leonard and then Jaden Greathouse, if he can keep going the way that he was going in the last couple of playoff games here, I think that will be very, very huge in terms of how he played, particularly against Penn State. And if he can keep it going after a year that was not necessarily as great, they're going to need that threat downfield. And that's one of the things that, again, that's if you're making a case for Notre Dame in this game. I mean, it's hard to make a case that like Jeremiah Love's going to run for 150 yards or anything, but you're going to have the vertical game be able to open it up enough to where Ohio State has to play them honest up front. And like I said, Ohio State, even if they are forced to play them honest, just with a regular front, without jamming the box, they may be able to stop the run anyways just because of the monstrous amount of talent they got there. So for Notre Dame to win this game, you really sort of have to squint at different scenarios, and I think I just identified probably the major one if they are to pull the upset, as well as turnovers, obviously. Got to get turnovers.
I do think it's going to be a close game. I mean, Ohio State started as 9.5-point favorite, and some of the wise guys bet Notre Dame and got down to 8 points. So I think Ohio State's going to win this game, but I think it's going to be close. You think it might be a lopsided blowout, Rick?
I don't think it's going to be a blowout, but it's one of these things, and this is one of the things that I've learned with handicapping over a period of time, is that you find yourself having to thread the needle, perhaps uncomfortably so, in different scenarios where it's like, I think so-and-so's going to win, but I think the other team's going to cover. I mean, that may happen in certain circumstances, but once you get inside of 10 points, it gets a little bit tougher for that to happen. And at the very least, if you're betting Notre Dame, but you think Ohio State's going to win, I guarantee you're going to be sitting there with heartburn the better part of the game, because you're going to be looking for, in all likelihood, Notre Dame to be able to get the backdoor cover, which would be possible, I think, here. But again, got to get turnovers, got to be able to have a balanced offense here. You can't put it all on Jeremiah Love because that is just going to be too lopsided of a scenario. As far as what Ohio State brings to the table, of course, that front four that they have there is just absolutely inhuman. And the talent level that Ohio State has, they ran into a little bit of an issue against Texas, as I suspected they might, in terms of being able to get the ball to Smith here, because who was probably the best player in all of college football, Jeremiah Smith. But again, Texas, they can throw the bodies at him to try to neutralize him. And that's where, like I said, Ohio State playing another one of the superpowers in the game vis-a-vis recruiting talent, NIL, etc., versus now going up against the Notre Dame team that is going to have to really scheme and I would say, sort of overachieve to be able to contain him. You saw what he did against an Oregon secondary that I don't think there's a darn thing wrong with what he did to them in the Rose Bowl. So I just look at it, and again, I expect to see a return to form for Jeremiah Smith in this game for Ohio State offensively, and that's going to spell nothing but bad news for Notre Dame.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely make a good point. Ohio State has been so hot and on fire since they lost to Michigan. They've been on a mission to prove and to win. But I think Ohio State's going to win. I mean, the thing is, it wouldn't shock me if they win by a lot, but I think it's going to be a fun game to watch, close down to the ball, either close or a backdoor cover.
It's going to be very fun to watch, very interesting, and like I said, I'm sure there's any number of families out there, like my family, where there's ties on both sides, particularly if you live here in the Midwest, as I do. Certainly all you got to do is go back to, who was it back in the day? I think it was it Brady Quinn's sister? I think it was either Brady Quinn's sister or A.J. Hawk's sister with the Ohio State-Notre Dame split jersey back in the day. But there are, again, these being two huge brands, this is going to be something where I think it's going to be an absolutely monstrous rating for the national championship. And yeah, you talked about Ohio State just being on an absolute mission here, and I read an article today that actually pointed out that one of the things I think that really kind of motivates them is the guy who is the beating heart and soul of this defense, Jack Sawyer, he is somebody where, again, he's heartbroken about the fact that he's 0-4 career against Michigan, and certainly none of that has to do with him because he's been great every time he's played them. It's been other things that have happened, particularly the offense in this year's game that let him down. But letting him go out as a national champion, that is the kind of redemption for a guy like that. For a guy who is, Ryan Day has said, who's going to go down as one of the big legends in program history. When you have a guy like that, that's the emotional leader of a program, and that the one thing that can really redeem his college career, he'll never beat Michigan, but he can be a national champion, I should say, and that it is very, very powerful motivation. Not to say that Notre Dame doesn't have their own. It's been since 1988 that they've won the national championship, and again, the LA Dodgers, who won the World Series in '88, they just won the last World Series, albeit they actually broke their drought in 2020. But maybe this becomes the second team in a couple of months to repeat from 1988. But I got to tell you, I don't see it.
Yeah, I think you're right, Rick, to that degree. Well, one thing I want to talk about, the ticket prices. The highest ticket prices are going for $14,000 a pop, and the cheapest ticket is $1,899, Rick. I mean, the prices are insane. Concessions are dirt cheap. Only in Atlanta, Mercedes-Benz Zone.
Yeah, they run that place very classy. I've never been there to watch any sporting events, but obviously my brother's family has been to a bunch of sporting events there, so I'm well acquainted from everything they've told me about it. And it is a great venue, no doubt, and a very worthy place for the national championship. Hilarious to me that you don't have any SEC representation in the national championship game in Atlanta. I wouldn't have believed that at the beginning of the season. I actually had Georgia-Texas meeting for the third time in the national championship game, so my preseason pick turns out to be wrong. But Ohio State and Notre Dame, again, two very powerful brands. They are both well represented in the area. I've actually been to some Notre Dame watch parties in Atlanta because my brother used to be the president of the Notre Dame fan club or booster club, alumni association, whatever it is for Atlanta. And all I remember, Fran, is we used to, and my entire family rags on me for remembering this and treasuring the memory so much. The sports bar that we used to watch their games at, this was one where you could get either, if you were ordering wings, you could get either the wingettes or the drumettes. And I always like getting the drums there. I always give me the single bone wings as opposed to the double bone wings, and I think for an extra 50 cents you could order all of one or all of the other. And that's a divisive topic too, what people prefer on that. But a fond memory I have from watching Notre Dame games down there. They have a pretty big following in the area, as does Ohio State.
Well, Rick, I'm glad the game's starting at 7:30. Some of these past championships started around 8:30, and the game didn't end after midnight. I'm glad they're starting the games a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I think they're learning their lesson, and they're going to do the usual surround thing where it's going to be on a bunch of different channels. So you'll have an alternate thing. If you want to hear Pat McAfee and his band of buffoons yammering along the sidelines, you'll get a chance to do that. If you want to watch the overhead cam, you'll get a chance to do that. So they're going to do a number of alternate casts.
Well, Rick, I will say one thing. Pat McAfee did a great job calling that final play with the strip sack, fumble, return for a touchdown. Everyone praised him for that when Ohio State beat Texas on that defensive touchdown. I
wasn't tuned in for that play on his feed of it, but yeah, they're going to have all of the usual bells and whistles. If it was outdoors, they would be doing probably a blimp cam. I watched the one time when they actually did a blimp cam, and I think they had a play-by-play team up in the blimp to make the call. So they won't have that with it being a dome show, but yeah, this is going to be something really special, I think. It is a game where I do expect Ohio State to separate from Notre Dame, and I'm going to make the prediction. I think Ohio State wins at 31-16.
I'll go with 31-27, Ohio State.
Okay. All right, so you see Notre Dame being able to hang offensively a little later in the game than I do. We shall see. It would take a lot of overachievement for them to be able to do that, but it would be a more interesting game the way you see it than the way I see it. So it is going to be something where, again, we're going to look back on all of this and really kind of marvel at all the things that have happened along the way, because this journey to the national championship game, completely unprecedented, first 12-team playoff that we have had. And again, we'll be back to recap not just the game, but the entire bowl postseason. But any other thoughts before we head into the game, Fran?
Otherwise, Rick, it's an exciting. It was an exciting, 12-team playoff. Next year, they may tweak things a little bit. I mean, in 26, they'll probably explain the 14 teams. But Rick, it was exciting. It was good to have good football, and it made everything else better with the other bowl games that we will discuss when we will recap the games.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's been a very, very entertaining college football postseason, and the championship game. It has some big shoes to follow as far as some of the other action that we've seen thus far. But I have every confidence that probably at least decently into the second half, it will be a very good game. And who knows, perhaps Fran will be right and it will be a good game just about all the way through. We shall see. But may the game that we see Monday night, quite frankly, live up to the preview that we just did of it. Fran Stuchbury from OurSports Central, thank you so much for being here today. And thank you, everybody, for checking out FDH Lounge mini episode 1803.